Hey, it's Joey Balladonna here from Anthrax, and this is SAGAS.
Well,
look, this is a big one.
I didn't break out and join the podcast today.
It is now time for Devil's Advocate. Same time, same place, awesome.
Waiting. What's going on, everybody? This is Corbin, the Serpent Tongue Skipwith, and I'm here with very special guests. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hey, it's Paul Mazurkiewicz, the drummer from Cannibal Corpse.
Thank you so much again for taking the time to be on this. I'm very, very grateful.
Oh, man, no problem. Thanks for having me on, dude.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. So the album that I decided to talk to you about was the album The Bleeding. It's my favorite Cannibal Corpse album, and so I wanted to pick your brain about it. Came out in 1994, which is the year I was born. So I guess it's a lucky album. The more, as the years go by, the older I feel, and I realize how old albums are. As I get older, I'm like, oh fuck, it's crazy. But nonetheless, The Bleeding. So the first thing I want to ask, what was the process, if you can remember, what was the process like for the band recording this album compared to your previous one, Tomb of the Mutilated?
Well, it was just a progression as we were going, of course, back in the early days of our career like that, since, we were only around at that point, maybe 5 years or so, and then, of course, working on The Bleeding, which was our fourth record, things, like I said, progressing in a sense of, you get more time, you get more budget and all that kind of thing. I mean, you look back at the very first album and, we're a new band and, you sign your contracts and all that. And, we only had like 10 days to record Eaten Back to Life from start to finish. And, but then, when you're reading the contract and you're looking at what's to come in the future for the upcoming records that you're going to make, you get more of a budget. And that would, of course, mean more time in the studio, so every album that we did from then on, of course, moving upward, you get more time, which is a big thing, of course. So, you go from Eaten with 10 days. And I believe the Butchered was about maybe a little over 2 weeks, maybe something like that. And then Tomb of the Mutilated ends up being like 3 weeks. And then you get to The Bleeding, and that's where we had a good month to record that, which was, of course, a big step up, so, and you feel you just kind of, the more time you got, the better, of course, so yeah, we had a good solid month to record that from start to finish. And, it was a interesting time, of course, a lot of things changing, and, it was a good time.
I can imagine. So before we go on, I want to know, because last week I spoke with last week's recorded episode. We talked about the album Pleasure to Kill by Kratos.
Nice.
Were you guys inspired by those kind of bands back then?
Oh, of course. I mean, those were our big influences. I mean, we're products of the 80s, and we all grew up in the 80s. And, so when we're starting to, get really, really interested in music, it's the early 80s. And, bands like, of course, the regular heavy metal that was out at the time, Black Sabbath and Judas Priest and all that. And then, here's this band that comes around, Metallica, what's this, Game Changer, of course. Then Slayer comes out, and, we're growing with this as teenagers. And it was an amazing time. And, then, of course, right, being a 15, 16-year-old around when all this starting to come up into play with these kind of bands, with the major thrash bands, that's what really resonated with all of us big time. So so it was huge. I mean, I think you can tell those influences, especially in the early Cannibal, Eating Back to Life and the demo. Creator was a huge influence for us, of course. All that thrash, Dark Angel and Sacrifice, and just Slayer, big influences. But Creator to Kill, Pleasure to Kill was one of our favorite albums, one of my favorites. We love that record and love that band. And those first three Creator records were incredible, but Pleasure to Kill, definitely one of the best. So yeah, that was a big influence.
Nice. That is an amazing album. And yeah, it's just because we were talking about it, and I thought about, how much of a game changer they were back then, and then how much of you guys were a game changer for metal, and obviously death metal, which was just starting to be a thing back then when they were around, and death obviously. And so yeah, I just want to ask the question.
Sure.
So secondly, or thirdly, did you guys know, was it transparent? Was it obvious? Or was it talked about while recording this album that this would be the last album with Chris?
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, we had our issues, of course, up to that point with him personally and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, there was no, that kind of talk at all. I mean, we're just moving forward, doing a record, the next chapter in the story kind of a thing. So I remember, that would have been our last album, commuting down to Tampa, Florida to record, because after that record, we moved here to Florida, as opposed to, coming down from Buffalo, New York, where we lived and we were from. But no, I mean, there was none of that. It was just business as usual. We got a record to record here, we got the songs done. We just get down there, let's do the best we can do it, get it done, and then, move forward here with some, touring and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah,
no, that's fair enough. And, I was thinking about it because as I was listening to this album for this interview, and I was going back on other albums as well, I noted, what was, because I know this a long time ago, but can you remember what it was like? Because I know, going back to Tomb of the Mutilated, you guys, pushed such boundaries with with just crazy songs like I Come Blood, Hammer Smash Bass, and so many crazy songs. Do you remember what the overall, how do I say this? The overall mentality going into the Bleeding was like? Or was it like, oh, we have to push it even further, we have to continue the extreme trend we did on the other album? What was going through your guys' heads making this?
Well, it was an interesting time when you think about the beginnings of Cannibal and those first formative years, in a sense. I mean, I really look at the Bleeding as being kind of our, this is where the band that we want to be, musically. And it took us a few years to get to that point. When you, especially when you compare the first four records, how different they really are, I mean, and how much we've progressed, and, we're still Cannibal, but, we're growing as a band. I mean, I always like to talk about or tell people just, the beginning of Cannibal. I mean, it happened so quick that we were only a band, 6, 7, 8 months. And, we're getting signed to Metal Blade, and here we are having to record a record here fairly quickly in our career, and when you look back, you're going, man, we didn't even have enough material to even have a debut record ready to go. I mean, that's why those 10 songs, that's what you had. Other than, I know it's known that we had 2 other songs, Enter at Your Own Risk, Escape the Torment, that we ended up playing early on in when we were playing live and all that. Those were the first couple of songs that we wrote, but that was it. We didn't have any other material. It wasn't like we had this big surplus of songs to choose from. Oh, our debut, hey, which one? Let's do our best 10. Well, we don't even have 10. We have to write these songs, as we go. So I look at it as we were just growing as a band. And it's a good thing, because I also look at it as, right, what if we didn't, what if and those what ifs and all that, and it's kind of moot. But what if we didn't get signed right away? What if it took a few years? Then what if the Bleeding was our debut record or something like that? I mean, which would be a great debut, but you'd never have gotten, Tomb of the Mutilated, Butchered at Birth, Eaten Back to Life, those formative years where you're trying to figure out who you are as a band, So I think, so that's kind of cool that the fans and the world were able to hear us grow as we were growing, hear the early years of the band, hear us, trying to find our identity, so to say. So I think our mentality was just always obviously just trying to get better and trying to write the better song. Once we hit the process for writing the Bleeding, I believe we were coming into our own. We've been around now for a few years. We're finding our style. We're gelling more. We're getting older. All those things, all those cliches. We're getting better at our instruments. We're becoming better songwriters as you go. And I really think that the Bleeding was that mark where this is where modern Cannibal kind of started. So I think we were. When you listen to it, I mean, I think it's brutal. All Cannibal Corpse is brutal, all intense. It's death metal. But when you compare, maybe you listen to Butchered, you listen to Tomb, you listen to Bleeding. I mean, it's not maybe as ferocious, as primitive sounding. You can see where, right, the songwriting came into play. We weren't really concentrating 100% on just pure adrenaline and speed and, the ferociousness or whatever the word is, like we had with those records. So I think it's a little more kind of tame in comparison. But it was really just having better songs, and the Bleeding, I believe, has that. I mean, arguably our best album and our biggest album. And, I think the one album that you can hear all 10 songs and go, wow, I mean, I think at one point we've played all of them live, which is a rarity for us. Even back then, I guess, when you had less material to play, but yeah, I think the Bleeding, it was just starting to come in. We were starting to come into our own, and there's never, ever been a talk of really consciously thinking, at any point, well, we got to do this, we got to do that. It was just like, we do what we do, but it was just a matter of that experience and that, gaining that, that time to be able to, like I said, become better musicians, better songwriters. And, it took us up to the Bleeding to finally get to the point where I think we really wanted to be.
Yeah. It's, I find that, the one thing I find interesting is whenever I listen to Butchered at Birth and Even Back to Life, to me, I consider those albums thrash albums. To me, they're very, they're a lot more in tune with thrash to me than they are death metal. And
Sure.
And what's funny is when I researched those albums, like even back then for your first two albums, there was censored versions trying to come out. There was censored artwork, censored, it was banned, I think, in Germany. If I read that correctly, like, it's just like you guys were nowhere near as hyper violent as you later became after those two albums. So it's really interesting how even back then, in with those first two albums, you were immediately in the danger zone with the media and with censorship
Mm-hmm.
and all that. What's it like being in a band where I assume that's a constant issue you're faced with, whether that be country to country touring? What's that like? Like it must be draining, or are you still by now?
Yeah, I mean, we just kind of like, we never really let any of that bother us, so to say. I mean, we just kind of, I guess when we started the band, you're already thinking, well, chances are you're gonna have some controversy. We're Cannibal Corpse. I mean, we're trying to take it to the next level. We knew all these things, so we're just playing music that we love to play. We're playing for the people that want to hear the music and support the music. And that was really our mindset. And that was it, and if things came along, like you said, with Germany and the, censorship and all this kind of thing, it was just, you let it kind of roll off your back and just do what you do. We never really let it bother us because it didn't stop us, so to say. I mean, yeah, maybe a couple speed bumps, you have some little hiccups that occur that, all right, you can't, but what comes down to it is the fans of those countries or whatever are the ones suffering, because we're still able to go there. We're still able to sell records, all those kinds of things. So yeah, I mean, you just didn't really think about it. We're just like, hey, we're just doing what we do. And we can't control, it's unfortunate, you hate to see it happen. It was annoying and all those kinds of things, but at the same time, it wasn't like a deterrent or some big kind of issue with us that we're really worried about. So, we just go about our thing and be Cannibal Corpse. And that's all we did and are still doing here. So.
I love it. Would you say, I guess part two of that question, would you say that that over the years playing this kind of music, being around these kind of, lyrics and artwork for the and song titles with this band, would you say that you've become like desensitized to kind of just all the hyper violence?
Yeah, I mean, I think we always kind of were, in a sense. I mean, it was always intriguing. Of course, that's why we end up writing what we do or being what we are. I mean, you look back as being a teenager starting out before you're, getting into music and all this. I mean, we're all into horror movies, we're all into the darker subjects of life. The music, of course, that we're listening to is dealing with that, So I mean, we didn't, I guess, never really took it too seriously, in a sense, I mean, we knew we just tried to take it over the top, take it to the next level. I mean, obviously it's going to have some sort of a, black humor type of kind of connotations to it, albeit, everything we do, we want to be 100% serious with. And we just want to be brutal. We want to be sickening. We want, people to kind of be repulsed, I guess. But at the same time, right, we know it's entertainment. So, yeah, I guess just the fact that we, I mean, none of this stuff, if in reality would of course be horrible, and no one wants to see any of this and hear about these things and, be confronted with these true, the horrible situations and things that have happened and do happen in the world. Those things are terrible. And I would never want to witness any of that or find that to be like, oh, wow, that's great. No, that's, it's bad. It's not good. But in the whole sense of it being entertainment, what we do, and, I guess we're just, we know it's fictional for the most part. I mean, obviously one or two songs, maybe that might have a tie-in that's something that might have really happened. But yeah, I think, I guess we are somewhat desensitized to it. And, it just doesn't, it's like I said, desensitized in the sense of it being, it's fiction. It's not real. I mean, we're entertaining. We're trying to entertain, we're a band, all that kind of stuff. So you just kind of, have that mindset, I guess, going into it, and have been ever since the beginning.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. What would you say was the hardest song to play for you on the album?
That's, I don't know. I remember, a kind of a story. I remember being actually kind of sick when we recorded The Bleeding. I do remember driving down. We were, said we're still living in Buffalo, and we ended up driving from Buffalo to Florida, which is a good 2-day drive or whatever. If you do, it's like 20 hours, 20 straight through. But and we left. I believe it was like kind of early spring, or it was still late winter. I can't even remember. But I remember getting sick along the way, and I don't know what I had. I had some sort of virus. I had some bug, and I don't even know what it was, because I never, like I said, went to the doctor or anything. I just knew I wasn't 100%. So that kind of sucked when you're going into recording and you're not feeling 100%. But albeit we're prepared, to record the record, and we, our prep has been as best as we can do it. So. I just remember the session itself being like, I remember having to crank down the air conditioning. I don't know why. I just felt so like bad that I think I froze those guys out, because we were still in the recording kind of old school in a way, where we're all in the same room. I mean, things are done obviously a lot different these days, but I remember having to crank the air conditioning in the drum room, and whoever was playing with me, I think it still was the band was playing, and then you do your overdubs later, but everybody was like freezing, and I'm hot, and I'm like, what, this is not right. But I recall that, and I don't know. I just look back, and it's hard to remember fully, but I don't remember ever being like an issue, a problem with any of the songs per se. I don't. I don't recall ever having oh man, this one's get me. I can't, got to take it, tried a bunch of times or whatever. So I think they all kind of fairly came together pretty normal, I guess, for the most part. So it's a good question, but it's really, it is hard to remember a lot of the fine details at this point, being so long ago now since we recorded.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I'm thinking, was there ever was there ever any, how do I word this? Like an awkward, no, not awkward, but like a certain transition period from, because now obviously when you guys do live shows and play old songs, now it's George singing. Not like, was there ever like an issue with, I don't know, with him playing older songs and like nothing at all?
Oh no, not at all. I mean, when George is in the band, I mean, that's all you have is old songs now. Other than of course his, the album, the Vial that he's on, right? You do, so you get that done. You go on the road. Now George is in the band. We have 5 albums. George is only on 1. Obviously, we have to play a bunch of older material, right? So that wasn't an issue at all. I mean, that was just part of making that transition that has to be done. I mean, if anything, it's maybe more of a deal to the fans, perhaps, right? Because you're changing your singer, and they're used to Barnes singing the songs, and he's the one that sang on the records and all that kind of stuff. So for us, it wasn't a problem or a big deal, or I don't think for George for that matter as well. So it's just what has to happen, when you make that change.
Nice. Well, I can definitely say, because I know there are a lot of bands out there where once they change singers, it just becomes a whole different band. But I can safely say for Cannibal Corpse, I think it's like the perfect, because like to me, it's not very noticeable. Like I listen to old and new, and it sounds seamless throughout the discography. So I think you guys made a good choice in doing that, because like I said, some bands, they get a new singer and it's just completely different, and it's just not unlistenable, but different, too different to enjoy what they used to be. But I don't think you guys have a problem, so it's good.
Well, that's good. No, I mean, the way we looked at it is, for both singers, they were never involved in the musical process, in the writing of the music. That's all it was the four of us, myself, bass, Alex, and guitar players, of course. So that never changed. That no one ever had input. Barnes never came in and say, well, we need to do this, or we're doing this or that, or this is this, this song, and George the same thing. So you got the singer singing over what we would have wrote no matter what. I mean, and that's why Vial, we had the kicking Barnes out at that time in the middle of recording Vial. That was the music, right? It wasn't like George came in and changed the music or anything, or what have you. That's what Vial would have been with Barnes on it. You've heard the Created to Kill demo, or sessions apparently, where Barnes sang on those songs, and nothing changed musically. That's the way we always were going to present those songs, other than of course the lyrics and the way the vocals turned out. So yeah, I think getting back to how I was saying, the natural progressions of the band and all that, we were going to be what we were musically, no matter what. I guess no matter who is singing, the music was going to be the music.
Yeah, I love it. And I know you guys on the Bleeding have a cover by Possessed, The Exorcist.
Actually, that was more, I mean, unless that was released later, that would have been for Tomb of the Mutilated, actually. Because we did the Possessed and the Zero the Hero after, and that's why it was released as the Hammer Smashed Face single. So I know that would have been before the Bleeding. So if it's ever tied into the Bleeding, which I don't believe it is, then that must be some bonus track that would have been added somewhere later for a certain release.
It says remastered version bonus track
on the Bleeding.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then that would have been added later. Now that shouldn't be on every CD. I don't even think I actually even heard of that before. So.
Well, there you go. But anyway, we're talking about the cover. So how did that cover come about?
I mean, we just wanted to do, those were our first two covers, of course, Zero the Hero and the Possessed song. And we did those at the same time. And we just wanted to, I mean, I remember, wanting to do something like the Possessed that was a big influence for the band as well. And we decided on that. And then the Sabbath came along, kind of same thing, I guess, just to have two different kinds of, influences. So we were huge fans of Possessed, of course. It was big influence. So it was fun to do, and it was fun to add our own twist to it a little bit, adding the blast and beat and all that kind of thing, and kind of make it our own. But but it was a fun to do, and just a great band to to pay homage to, so that's why we did it.
Yeah. I must say, I absolutely love your guys' cover of Zero the Hero.
Oh, cool, man.
I listen to it all the time.
Yeah, that turned out good. No, that was a good one. A lot of people liked that a lot. I mean, I know we played it live a couple of times back then, and it turned out well. It really transferred good for for them to to us and all this. I mean, what a good one. And really, I'm glad you dig it. Yeah, so it was fun to do that too.
Yeah, it's a good song. Now tell me how did it take you guys a long time to what's the word, to settle on an album cover?
Well, that was a little tricky. I mean, if you notice, how our album covers were going up to that point, you got Eaten, Butchered, and Tomb, some pretty brutal stuff there. And then you got The Bleeding, which is more of an kind of like a surreal avant-garde kind of piece, where you're like, what is this? Right. So I remember it being the issue where I know on the reissues, and now you see the full piece of work with the guy kind of in the whole, wall of bodies kind of a thing, well, that of course was the original piece that Vince had for us. And I remember us not really being, kind of that, I mean, it's a great piece of everything that Vince does, amazing art, I mean, I think our mentality at that point was, man, we just had three brutal record covers, and then this piece is presented to us, and it was cool, but it wasn't as brutal as we maybe thought we would have wanted, I guess, so then it comes down to being like all timing and all, deadlines and things. I think what ended up happening was, well, we didn't decide as a band that we wanted that piece as the album cover with the, the full shot. And now we're running out of time, though. We don't have the liberty to tell Vince, hey, let's come, you do another piece, let's draw something different and all that. No, we got to get this going. Otherwise we're going to miss deadlines and all that. So that's why we decided, if you notice, that really it's the abdomen of the guy blown up, basically, Yep. So we I'll make it a little bit kind of mysterious, like a blood splattery kind of look to it. And, I guess that's, that was our thought process on that, we just really weren't fully thinking that piece was what we wanted as a cover. And like I said, you look back at it now, I mean, it's a great piece, and,
Yep.
Maybe we're a little too critical, but, we're young, we just, like I said, we just got off of Tomb of the Mutilated, Butchered, Birth. I mean, so all three of those covers. And then we just felt that we were losing a little bit of that intensity if we would have released that piece as is. So that's why we ended up doing that.
And so normally when you guys are forced to use censored covers for albums, do you guys have to pay for that?
Well, I mean, when you're paying your artist, you gotta, he's gonna have to do a couple of pieces, so I guess you would get more money per piece. I mean, it just when we did Eaten Back to Life, you have one cover, right? So you tell Vince, hey, we need a cover, this is our cover, and that's it. So obviously he's getting paid to do that, and he's only coming up with one piece of artwork. So then it was come to the Tomb of the Mutilated when you had the two pieces. Well, I know he would have got more money for drawing two pieces, so that's just the way it goes, right? It comes down to that. I mean, you hate to do it, but I mean, it had to be done. And unfortunately, it's still has to be done depending on the cover, of course, like coming up to where we obviously did Violence Unimagined, our last record, where you have the really brutal piece with the zombie woman, whatever, demon woman with the baby and all that. And we would have loved that to have just been the proper cover, that's it. And then, well, we're going to get censored, hey, well, Vince has to do another piece of art, so he's going to have to draw something else. And he draws the side view of the face and all that. So, he's not going to do it for free. Yeah. I mean, that'd be nice if he did, but now he's going to get paid for his work. So, you got to pay him again to do another piece. So that's just, it's the nature of the business. So,
yeah, it's just like I'm curious. I'm curious if you, maybe you don't know yourself, but is there, like, if you guys turned around at the request, what's the worst that would happen if you guys just said, no, we don't want to make a censored cover?
It would, that's where we're hearing from the record label. You're going, okay, we need a censor cover because they'll tell us, hey, we're not going to be able to get into this record chain. This country is going to have a problem with it. It's going to get, banned, and then you're not going to be able to sell it, so that's what we could obviously say, well, we don't care. Well, that's probably not a great business move because you want your music to get to the masses. That's obviously the most important thing. You hate to have to, give in to your creativity in that way. Right. If it was up to us, of course, every album would just have one brutal cover and that's it. You don't need a censored version. You don't want a censored version, but exactly. If you want it to be able to get to the masses and this is what needs to be done, and that's what the record label's telling you, then you kind of have no choice. I mean, for us, like I said, to us, it's really, it's about getting the music out to the people, and we don't want to have that there be a problem on that end. So it's just unfortunate that it has to be that way, but but that's just the way I guess it goes when you're Cannibal Corpse.
and just one other thing on the topic, I'm curious, was because we discussed on Facebook a few days ago how Kill was your mainstream breakthrough. Well, everyone feels that way. Was there some kind of push as to why the album cover is just Kill? No.
Well, there you go. Our two issues that we had artwork wise, which we obviously just talked about, the bleeding. When you look at our album covers out of all 15, what are the two different ones? The bleeding and Kill, right? So, we just mentioned what happened with the bleeding. It was a very similar thing happened with Kill. Here you go. You're always dealing with deadlines. If you got to get an album out, you got to get everything together, artwork, packaging, you got to get it at a certain time for certain dates for it to be released, all those kinds of things. Right. So, the same thing happened with Kill. We have this record, we're going to come out. Okay. Vince is, drawing this piece. I think at that point, a lot of our covers, it depends on the cover, depends on what the album title, depends on any of our vision compared to Vince's. Some of the covers we told Vince specifically, hey, here's the album title, this is what we're going for. Other covers or title, album titles we go, hey, this is going to be the title. We have nothing. What do you got? Can you come up with something? And I believe Kill was one of those as well. All right, we're going to call the record Kill. Here you go, Vince. What do you got? So when he presents that piece to us, of course, the guy holding the knife, that everyone, you see it's inside the cover and all that, the face, the teeth and all that, pretty brutal. But at the same time, everyone wasn't fully on board with just like, I don't know, there was a little skepticism. People, I don't know, So while now we're stuck in the same kind of thing we were with the bleeding, what do? We don't have enough time here. We can't tell Vince to go back and start a new piece here. We're just never going to make our deadlines. So we have to do something here. So that's when we decided, we were like, hey, let's put that piece inside, the artwork inside the packaging, and then let's just do what we did basically with Kill. Let's just put it, put the word Kill on there, Cannibal Corpse. There you go. It's kind of, and then I think at that point too, our mentality was a lot of, man, we feel that the music should stand on its own. I mean, it is a big part of Cannibal and a lot of bands, the visual aspect, album covers and all that. But like I kind of touched on a little minute ago, is about just the music. It's all about the music. The music should stand. I mean, we should be able to release every album without a cover, in a sense, just to say, hey, here's the new album. This is the music, because that's all about the music. It's not, you shouldn't be buying our records because of the visuals. It helps. It's cool. It's a good tie-in, but it's not about that. It's about the music. So I believe that was our mindset on that. Hey, let's, we'll be fine. Let's just put it out there. We feel like we got a great record. We got some great songs. And there you go. You got an album that comes out like Kill, like we mentioned, how it was a big stepping stone for us to take it to the next level. And it wasn't because of the album cover, of course. It's because of those songs inside, that we came up with. So it was looking back, it was kind of, it's cool to have those stories and, things that happen and, around all those, what we had to do. But, we just had some good, who knows why we had some songs that just resonated, that just came together and just, gelled. And here we go. We got an amazing record that the fans really got into and took us to that next level. But yeah, it had nothing to do with the record. The artwork. So, but yeah, that was that. So.
Hearing you tell these stories, it really makes me now, after you just told those stories, it really makes me surprised that the wretched Spawn art got out.
Well, it got censored, and I know in Europe there is a censored version. They just used part of it, but yeah, The Wretched is a pretty brutal record, pretty brutal album, but it did get censored. It didn't make it, but it was sold in the States, which was crazy, because I know a lot of, but I think a lot of our censorship problems back then were in Europe. So it's like, okay, the States will accept it. We're going to be good with that. But yeah, anywhere else or Europe, well, we're going to need a censored version. So it ended up having that.
Yeah, that's what, although I do 100% agree, it is about the music, and I couldn't agree more with that. But at the same time, the Cannibal Corpse imagery, it's what, to me, it's what put you guys, like on a different level from other death metal bands as well. Because, you hear about Cannibal Corpse, and then it's like, it's that thing where, like, like, someone who hasn't heard of Cannibal Corpse before, you just show them your art, your uncensored covers, and they're like, "Oh fuck!" It's a shocking moment.
No, you're right. No, and especially back then, I don't think we would have been able to get away with it as well as we did, say, with Kill, because obviously we're talking years into our career now, we're established, all those things. But yeah, wouldn't have been as good to do it for Eating Back to Life or Butchered at Birth, when we're starting out, and obviously the genre being so new, and it has its hand in what death metal is, of course. Visuals was a big part of it, and definitely for us as fans, yes, that was a huge thing. I mean, that's how how you bought stuff back in the day, when you're growing up. You go to the record store, you go, wow, look at that cover. I mean, and you don't even know what the band sounds like at all, but you're going, wow, the cover is incredible. I mean, this, and then luckily nine times out of 10, the album, was good, but that's how we got into a lot of our bands back then. So we knew it made a big difference. But I guess I said, the older we got, the fact that we were around for a while and all this, and we're established, it worked with something like Kill. But yeah, it might not have worked in the early days.
Yeah, it's just amazing, the career you guys had from the first album, as I said, a lot more thrash orientated to where you guys are now. And, you know, undoubtedly, and I've, you know, I say this to anyone, because I talk, you know, like I have a lot of music friends because I'm a big music addict myself. And, you know, undoubtedly, I've said this for, I swear, the past 15 years, Cannibal Corpse, king of death metal. I think it's undisputed. And, you know, hopefully you guys hear that a lot. I'll be surprised if you don't.
I appreciate it, man. No, I mean, we've been around a long time, of course. And, you know, that's amazing. Who would have thought we'd be around here 34 years, you know, and still going pretty strong, I guess. So, I mean, you look back and you go, wow, yeah, we were there in the beginnings of it, you know, not the very beginning, but, you know, one of those bands that have been there kind of, you know, starting it out of sorts after, you know, you got Death and you got, you know, Autopsy and bands like that, Obituary. And then, you know, you got the bands like Ourselves, and, you know, there was Morbid before us, and you got Deicide and Us, Suffocation, Immolation. You got all those bands that are, you know, still kicking and have been there for as long. It's just amazing. So yeah, we hear it, and, you know, it's an awesome feeling, and it's an awesome thing to hear that, you know, that people look up to us that way. And I mean, we feel like we've done something positive for music, for the world. You know, if you can touch people that way and have those thoughts, if they can have those thoughts, I mean, you know, you definitely feel good about yourself for the most part. So yeah, it's been pretty amazing.
And you know, what I realized, something ironic as I was studying this album, the Death album, Scream Bloody Gore, the producer mixer Randy Burns, who I talked with a month ago, great guy.
Oh, no. Nice.
Scott Burns produced this album.
Yeah, I know. Go figure, right? You know,
yeah.
It was kind of weird that a Burns would be still involved when you had Randy Burns back then. I know, you know, and then for to do Death as well. So, you know, that is kind of ironic, isn't it? Right?
Yeah, I saw it. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, that's cool.
Yeah. That is
So, one last question I have is: have you, through your years as a band, is there any band going today, you know, newer band or a band that's been around for a few years where you've had the thought, these guys are like the Cannibal Corpse proteges? Is there any band that's out there?
It's tough to answer, man. You know, there's so much good bands, and you know, and I'll tell you the truth too. I am not on top of today's musical scope. You know, I am just like, man, I don't know what's happening for the most part. You know, so it's a little tough. But I mean, the cool thing is, I guess I can to touch on somewhat like that is, you know, seeing a lot of these younger bands that are kind of reinventing they're doing a lot of the old school death metal, you know, where obviously for years it was just like all these bands just taking it to the extreme of how fast you can play, how crazy you can write, all that kind of thing. And it was, you know, I don't know, myself personally, it was like, well, I don't dig that as much as just like the classics, you know. So it's cool to have bands like, you know, this, and we toured a little bit with that 200 Stab Wounds, and, you know, you got bands like Gate Creeper that are, you know, that are newer bands, but yet they're kind of like, they're old school, you know, they're kind of, they got that old school kind of vibe, you know, and I like that, you know, that's cool to me, you know, that's come around again, kind of full circle. But yeah, I mean, it's as for particular bands, it's hard for me to really say, because like I said, I don't know what's going on too much in the world of the newer stuff and all that. So I would be probably not having a proper answer, I guess. You know, but I remember the one band that really caught us. I mean, I know they're still around. I'm not, and they're still amazing. Is, man, I remember when Eon Bleeding the False came out. I don't know if you remember that. I think that was back when early 2000s. I can't remember when it was, 2005 or something. Man, that album just blew us away. I mean, that was when, in a time when I thought everything was just sounding like a lot alike and all that. And now when I remember hearing that record, and it was just utterly blown away. Nils, what an amazing drummer. And, you know, the songwriting, it was just like, wow, this is incredible stuff. I mean, and, you know, and you say, yeah, like that's newer, but you know, we're talking what, 20 years ago already, you know? So that's funny to think about that, but yeah, I just don't know what's happening out there these days in my old age. So,
you know, one band I love that whenever I hear them, I always think of you guys. Like it kind of in my mind goes hand in hand. I think it's the hyper violent lyrics. It's just the brutality is the band Death Clock.
Oh, Death Clock.
Like, I mean,
Yeah.
but they're a lot more tongue in cheek with their lyrics,
Right.
they're still very hyper violent, very, you know, brutal, and they play amazing music even though they're so tongue in cheek. It's just like, I don't know why I always think of you guys and the way you guys did it and the way they're doing it. I can't. It's always hand in hand.
Well, that's cool. That's cool, man. No, that's awesome that, you know, that they did that, I mean, for being like a fake band, but then being of course, you know, where they took it to where they did. I mean, it's just pretty remarkable, but yeah, you know, trying to be over the top as well. So, you know, that's amazing.
You know, that's all I had for you today. Thank you again for coming on. You've been an amazing guest, and it's been a dream of mine since I was a teenager to talk to a member from Cannibal Corpse. So it's really been an honor.
Awesome, man. No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Corbin. It's been a lot of fun, and it was great talking to you. And you know, hopefully we'll see you out there one of these days. We got to make our way to Australia. It's been too long, man. You know, so hopefully something's coming up eventually here. But you know, it'd be great to be back. Yeah.
If you guys are ever in Melbourne, Australia, hit me up, and I'll definitely be there in the crowd.
Definitely, man. We'll do that. So that'd be great.
All right. Thank you very much again. I'll talk to you later.
All right, man. Take care. Thank you.
See you later.
All right.